If you've been following along, then you know that we're going through the 5-Foot Shelf of Magic 2024 edition. In case you missed the first couple of episodes, you can very easily catch up by watching these videos, but I'll give you the brief rundown right now. Almost 90 years ago, Ted Anneman postulated that if you purchased a 5-foot shelf of magic and filled it with these books, which he defined back then, you could go from basically knowing nothing about magic to being conversant on almost any subject of magic and being able to perform. I decided it would be fun to go back through and update this because not everything that Ted suggested is still available, and the version that I did a few years ago, some of those books have fallen out of print as well. We've done 2 feet of the 5-foot shelf of magic, and we're now entering that 3rd foot. And this one I think is going to be fun because in this one we're going to discuss tricks. I won't have time to make suggestions for each one of these, but most of these books I have done another review, and I'll attempt to timestamp as well as place some cards up here in the corner so that you can check out the more detailed review and see if I have any tips for the types of tricks you might want to perform out of that. You ready? Let's go. First up is actually a Ted Anneman book, and one of the things that's so remarkable about it is that it's been in print for so long. The book is Practical Mental Effects, or Practical Mental Magic if you have an older version, and this was a compilation put together by Ted Anneman's friends after his untimely death. They culled all of the best tricks from the Jinx, which I recommend you pick up if you can, but if all you want is the best of the Jinx based on other people's opinions, then Practical Mental Effects does that admirably. There are tons of different categories of tricks that you can find. It's all somewhat mental flavored, but there are a lot of different tricks with cards, books, pieces of paper, and even money. It is written in an older style, so most of the write-ups are fairly concise, but certainly still applicable and performable in today's environments. I know that I personally have performed a number of these effects for lots of different people. One of the best things about old books like this is they don't require you to have a lot of props. If you have a deck of cards, some paper and pencils, and the know-how that you'll get from this book, you'll be prepared to amaze and delight your audiences. I promise that if you study this book and actually try out some of the magic that's taught here, it's not only tremendous, but you'll also find that you're one of the only people doing it, so you don't have to worry about overlapping with what other people are performing for audiences. Keeping with the mentalism theme, although that's not going to be everything on this list, there's a book that's been in and out of print, and right now it's still in print. It's a compilation, which is another one of my favorite categories of books, and it's more modern than the book we just talked about, Practical Mental Effects. This is Bruce Bernstein's Unreal. Bruce is a Chicago-based mentalist, and he's compiled some of the best mentalism that he's written up from a variety of booklets that he put out, and it's now in one beautiful hardbound volume put out by Squash Publishing. I know I said that I perform a lot of things from Practical Mental Effects, but in Unreal, many of these effects have gone into my paid show programs. So if you're looking for mentalism that will play to the largest venues and stages, all the way to the smallest gatherings and house parties, there's plenty to like in here with a variety of different props as well. If you're not really a mentalist in the sense that you take it seriously and don't perform magic, then this book is still perfect for you because Bruce Bernstein doesn't care about those arbitrary distinctions between magic and mentalism. Instead, he focuses on what the effect is for the audience and provides you with practical and fun ways to get there. Definitely check out the full review if you're interested in learning more about that one. That pretty well covers the mentalism aspect of this portion of the 5-foot shelf, but there's one more that bridges between the two worlds, both in terms of magic versus mentalism and old school versus new school. It's not a cheap book, but it is one of my favorites. It's The Secret Ways of Al Baker, put out by The Miracle Factory. This one is getting older now. It was released a number of years ago, but it is thick and contains almost everything that Al Baker either published or released as individual tricks. If you don't know how brilliant Al Baker was, I really would love for you to check this out. Al was a contemporary of Ted Anneman, and at first they were enemies, then they were friends, and that's a story for another time. But what's important is he was one of those early godfathers of mentalism who really helped to shape and design what mentalism would become. But he wasn't just a mentalist. In fact, he was a kids performer, did birthday parties, and an all-around hilarious guy by all accounts in this book. He was one of the first people to teach a center tear with a live peak, what we now know as the umbrella move. He did early thread work with hair, but he was just such a creative and hilarious magician. I know you'll love learning some tricks and just seeing what his life was about through the pages of The Secret Ways of Al Baker. This episode is being brought to you by Don's Magic and Books. If you are having trouble finding any of these books, and I know a few of them have become a little more rare in recent years, going in and out of print, then Don is a perfect resource for you. Don doesn't just sell new books, although he does. He also finds books that are gently used to repurpose them and get them into the hands of magicians like you, people who are looking for these rare gems that maybe you missed out on initially. I'm going to drop a link to his website down in the description below, so definitely check it out. He offers great deals and free shipping if you meet minimum thresholds in the United States, and I'm confident that once you start buying from Don, you'll become a lifetime customer. I'd hate for you to miss out on any of the great deals or limited availability that he has, so be sure to check his site frequently. I don't know what you're waiting for. Head over to Don's Magic and Books and tell him I sent you. In another recommendation for this shelf related to a magician who's now passed and bridged those worlds between magic and mentalism, I highly recommend Mastering the Art of Magic by Eugene Burger. Hopefully I don't have to introduce you to the name Eugene Burger. He's still very well known and very well respected, even though he passed a number of years ago. This book, put out by Kaufman and Company and republished recently, really is an excellent way to not only learn some great tricks, but also get the theory and thoughts behind what makes magic work from someone who is at the top of his game. Eugene took magic seriously, and he wanted you to take it seriously as well. By creating the right atmosphere and giving it the gravitas that it deserves, he knew that we could elevate it beyond just a puzzle for people to figure out. Eugene will teach you his take on modern classics, but not only that, he'll give you his thoughts on the difference between practice and rehearsal, how to use technology to your advantage to get better. There are even some cynical short stories that have a lesson for those interested in learning them. This is old school Chicago bar and restaurant magic, but that doesn't mean that it won't play for you today, whether you're at a restaurant, gathered with a group of friends, or even have your own close-up setup. But as we seek to master the art of magic with this 5-foot shelf, I can't think of a more appropriately named book to be on your shelf. As I consider my journey through the magic book world, one of the first books that I ever picked up was The Magic of Michael Amar. This book is chock full of really practical and really fun magic. You'll learn close-up pieces like the crazy man's handcuffs, as well as pieces that will play to a parlor-sized audience. But what I think really makes this book worthy of being on your shelf is the idea that you're learning from a master magician, someone who won competitions, who was commercially successful, who was also a great teacher. And he's really holding nothing back. You'll get his tips on practicing, and if you're wanting to enter a competition, how do you get ready for that? You'll learn negotiation techniques. He did an audio tape release about negotiating for higher performance fees, and those lessons are distilled here in this book as well. You'll get his thoughts on what makes magic special and how you can increase the impact to your audience. To me, this is a modern classic of magic and definitely worthy of a spot on your shelf. Speaking of classics, The Classic Collection by Harry Lorraine is another highly recommended book I think you should have on your shelf if you want to learn tremendous card tricks. Harry died a few years ago, but was a prolific writer and creator of magic tricks, and some of the best card tricks in the world are written up in The Classic Collection Volume 1. When I got into purchasing magic books and adding to my library, it was one of the first ones that I was really looking forward to getting. In fact, I had it shipped to my office so that I could open it there at work and look up a couple of tricks that I was dying to know the secrets to. I still perform those tricks to this day, and they've held me in great stead for those times when someone hands you a deck of cards, you don't know the condition, you don't know what order they're in, but you need to be able to perform some impromptu card magic. Harry Lorraine is there to guide you. And indeed, his writing style is very conversational, so when you read these books, you can basically hear him sitting next to you and guiding you along with the write-up, all of the slights that you'll need to know. All that's taught, but on top of that, you'll get his afterthoughts with some of the key mindsets and tips that you'll need to deploy. Never one to shy away from telling you how great this magic is. If Harry were still around, he'd be telling you to get it while you still can. Last but not least on this list is a trilogy of books. And when you think about books filled with tricks, there are so many people that think of these books. Most of it has to do with close-up magic, but again, don't let that dissuade you. If you're looking to become a performer and go from this beginner state to someone who can actually perform almost anytime, anywhere, then you need these books. And they're becoming a little bit harder to find. This is The Art of Astonishment trilogy by Paul Harris. I don't need to introduce you to Paul Harris. He's pretty well known even today. He released a lot of individual books in the 70s and 80s, but then L&L Publishing asked him to compile those together, revise them, re-edit them, and make some additions to them into these 3 gorgeous hardbound volumes. They're filled with not only great magic, but also hilarious stories and anecdotes from Paul himself. You could start with any of the 3. They're not in any particular order, and you could take a look at the table of contents to see which one most appeals to you. He does have a lot of friends that contributed to these books, so you're getting a huge selection of material from which to choose and learn. And if you're having trouble deciding what tricks are some of the best in those, I've actually put together a study guide for you, and you can check that out over here. As always, my friends, I appreciate you watching, and until next time, keep reading.